Hey everybody! So again today we are continuing along with our season previews and we're talking about the Calgary Flames. Before I get into the video, I just quickly want to say if you're not yet a subscriber to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and follow along for hockey content all season long. And if you enjoy this video, please hit that like button and give it a thumbs up. That really helps out the channel a lot and is greatly appreciated. So the Calgary Flames, last year one of the best teams in the West, won their division, went into the playoffs, and got really destroyed by the Colorado Avalanche. And the big story for the Flames heading into this season is Matthew Tkachuk, a week before the start of the regular season, is still not signed, at least as of the recording of this video. I'm looking at the Flames lineup right now, and I think it's gonna be an interesting year. I really don't know with this team. Obviously, they still have some great talent: Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, Lindholm, Mark Giordano, and T.J. Brodie on the back end. They've got some incredible players. But depth, it looks like it's going to be a huge issue. They don't have a lot of cap space. If they do sign Tkachuk, they're going to have no cap space. This is a team that I think the lack of depth really could come back and bite this year. So let's take a look at the projected lineup. This is the projected lineup without Matthew Tkachuk because he is not signed yet, so I have him out of the lineup. And this is what they'll look like if they start the season without him signed. For line combinations, I use cap-friendly depth charts and daily face-off. I look at both of those sites and kind of base it off of what they have, and then maybe make a tweak here or there, but for the most part, it's based off of those sites. I don't put the lines together myself because in a lot of cases, especially with third and fourth lines, you just don't know. So here's the lineup without Matthew Tkachuk for the Calgary Flames. Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, and Elias Lindholm return as your top line, one of the best first lines in the league. They put up a great number of points last year and will again probably this year. That is the line that makes this team go. Now, Matthew Tkachuk had 34 goals last year on that second line as the left winger. Without Matthew Tkachuk, that moves Sam Bennett up to the second line left wing spot. And Sam Bennett, I like him a lot. He's a very good player. He's tough. He plays with grit. I like him a lot as a player. He offensively is not a top six player. He has not developed enough offensively to where he puts up top 6 points. So without Matthew Tkachuk, that moves him off of the third line, which is really where I think he's best suited, into a top 6 role, and I just don't know if he's going to be able to produce offensively enough to fill that top 6 role. He only had 27 points last year, and that's kind of been the story with him. He's a good, hardworking, tough two-way player, but the offense hasn't really come yet for him at the NHL level. It's been a struggle to put up points for Sam Bennett. He only had 13 goals last year. So I think he's much better suited for a third line role, and that's not where he is with Tkachuk out of the lineup. Third line, Milan Lucic, Mark Jankowski, and Austin Czarnik. Again, is Austin Czarnik should he really be on a third line in the NHL level? Probably not, but depth is a huge issue for this team, and that leaves a fourth line, Andrew Mangiapane, Derek Ryan in the middle, and Dylan Dubé, potentially a young guy who's going to make the full-time NHL roster this year on the wing. So again, great first line, but without Matthew Tkachuk, the depth scoring takes a huge hit. Without Matthew Tkachuk, the depth in total takes a huge hit. And this is a team without a lot of cap space, so it's not like they can sign, third and fourth line guys to fill in some of these depth issues. It's going to be something to watch this year. Moving on to the defense, Mark Giordano and T.J. Brodie are your top pair. Definitely their two best defensemen. Noah Hannafin and Travis Hamonic make up the second pair. So pretty solid top four there, honestly. When you look at that as a top four defense group, That is very, very good. And Giordano is 35, but he won the Norris Trophy last year and had a great 73-point season. TJ Brody now has been a very consistent two-way defenseman for the Flames. Hamonic, solid guy, pretty tough defensive defenseman. And then Hannafin can bring some offense as well. So very, very good top four. But again, depth becomes an issue, especially with the injury to Juuso Valimaki, who tore his ACL this offseason. And, who knows when he's going to be back. I guess given that injury and the way the time frame usually works with hockey players and ACLs, it's possible maybe he could return towards the end of the season or for the playoffs, but he's going to miss a large part of this season, if not all of it. So that leaves Oliver Killington taking that spot. He played 38 games at the NHL level last year. He had 8 points, and he's 22, not a bad defenseman, but you're already testing your depth. He was set to be the 7th defenseman. Now he's in your top 6 because of injury already. And Rasmus Andersson, this is a huge year for Rasmus Andersson. If he can become a top 4 type player, he's 22. He's had he spent a few years in the minors. He's played at the full year at the NHL level last year. If Rasmus Andersson can become a top 4 defenseman, that will greatly help this team overall. That will knock Hamonic down to the bottom pair where he can play more of a defensive role and a toughness role. But again, there are good players there now, and I think their defense is fine now, but there's very little depth. If someone goes down with an injury, you don't have a lot of depth there. The goaltending duo, Mike Smith is gone off to Edmonton, so the goaltending duo is David Riddick taking over the starting job with Cam Talbot as the backup, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, I do not trust this goaltending duo at all. David Riddick played 45 games last year. He basically split the season with Mike Smith. Was really good early on in the season, but then not so good down the stretch, and actually down the home stretch of the season, lost the starting job back to Mike Smith, and then Mike Smith played in the playoffs. So, can Riddick be a full-time starter for a full season? He hasn't shown that yet, so they're kind of relying on an unproven starting goaltender. And Cam Talbot, I honestly think, is done at the NHL level. His time in Edmonton was such a disaster, especially the last 2 years. Some of that is his fault. Some of that is just the lack of quality defense in front of him and the overall just trash that the Edmonton Oilers have been for the past couple of seasons. But I just think mentally he's done. Maybe a change of scenery and getting him out of Edmonton. And, he went to Philly at the end of last year, and Philly's not a great place for goaltenders generally either. So maybe just getting him in a new situation can help. But I personally don't trust Cam Talbot at all anymore. I think mentally he's done, and probably not going to have a great year at the NHL level. So, that goaltending I think could be an issue for this team because I don't think they don't have a proven starter. They don't have a proven NHL starter. Talbot's been horrible for the last 2 years. Riddick hasn't done it for a full season yet. Now, maybe Riddick ends up, really grabbing that starting job by the throat and taking over and having a great season. And if he can do that, then again, that puts them in much better shape. But I just don't know that that's going to happen. So as we look at extra players here, obviously Matthew Tkachuk is the big one with an asterisk next to his name. They need to get him signed and him back into this lineup. Matthew Tkachuk makes this team significantly better. Without him, they're in trouble. With him, I think they might be okay and decently similar to where they were last year. Maybe not as good because of the depth issues, but at least still a decent team. Without him, I think they're in big trouble. And then Alan Quine as an extra forward, and Ryan Lomberg, someone who's going to start the year certainly in the minors, but potentially could come up on a call-up if they need an extra forward. They don't have a whole lot of depth. If guys start going down with injuries, they are going to be reaching into their AHL, level players very quickly. And then defensively, Michael Stone, who they bought out and now have re-signed, is, I guess, set to be their 7th defenseman right now. Brandon Davidson's another guy who could end up being the 7th defenseman. And then Renat Valiev is a guy who's going to be in the minors, but potentially could see a call-up if needed. Again, no depth. With that injury, they were in okay shape with Juuso Valimaki set to play with Rasmus Andersson on that bottom pair. That left Killington as your 7th defenseman, Davidson as an 8th, and they were in pretty, decent shape. Not great depth, but decent shape on the back end. That Valimaki injury really, really hurt because now Killington's into your top 6. You had to re-sign Stone. Davidson now is probably more suited for the AHL, but likely going to have to play a bigger role than that. And just overall, your depth as a whole took a hit. I don't trust this team's depth at all. The Flames, if they stayed perfectly healthy, could certainly be a playoff team again and certainly compete for the Pacific Division, being near the top of that division. But this is the NHL. Guys don't stay healthy. You're going to have injuries. There are going to be times where you're probably going to have 2 or 3 important players out of the lineup at a time. And I don't think they have the depth to deal with that. And certainly not without Matthew Tkachuk in the lineup. So, I have, looking at that Pacific Division, overall it's a pretty weak division in the NHL. 3 teams probably only make the playoffs from that division because the Central, I think, is much, much better. Some playoff team from last year from the Pacific, I have not making it because I think Vancouver does get in this year, and Vancouver has improved a lot this offseason, which means one of those playoff teams from the Pacific last year is not going to make it. And quite honestly, I think the Flames are probably my top pick to be a team that doesn't make it. I'll talk more about that, obviously, when I do my predictions video. This is not my predictions video. This is preview for the team. But I think it's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs this year. They're going to have to stay very, very healthy and not go deep into that depth to even really have much of a chance. And I don't trust the goaltending duo. So between depth issues and not trusting the goaltending, I think it's going to, I'm thinking they're one of those teams that made the playoffs last year that don't this season. That's just my opinion. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.